The Permanent Forum is a subsidiary organ, and it's an advisory body to the Economic and Social Council. And the mandate of the Permanent Forum is in 6 areas, which is education, health, culture, human rights, environment, and social and economic development. So those 6 areas are the areas in which the Permanent Forum, as an advisory body of the United Nations, should advise ECOSOC how to deal with Indigenous issues in these particular areas of concern.
Its work is to be done in 3 major ways. One is to give recommendations to the UN system. The second way is through raising awareness about Indigenous issues and also promoting coordination and the mainstreaming of Indigenous issues. And the third, by producing relevant material.
One of our chief messages is to ensure that Indigenous peoples who were previously marginalized and often left out of things are included in everything that we do.
Yo creo que es una gran vergüenza para los gobiernos y para las Naciones Unidas que no incluyeron dentro de las metas del milenio a los pueblos indígenas. Los derechos, la identidad, la dignidad y la cultura de los pueblos indígenas. Pero es tiempo de superar. Yo creo que tenemos 10 años para quitarnos esa vergüenza.
Indigenous peoples are not captured in the statistics and therefore not addressed very often in public policies. This is a reality, so we have to face that.
When you talk about Millennium Development Goals, then of course you have to talk about free, prior, informed consent, because you cannot just take away, you know, the lands of Indigenous peoples without their consent.
Our land! That's right.
Or bring in development projects there without their consent, because in the end it might mean destruction for their own communities, and that I think is the problem with the same problem when we talk about gender, you know, that when you bring in projects or when you come up with policies, then you have to be very sure that gender equality is also essential in these projects. And I think for financial institutions, who are the ones who are the main funders of development projects, these 2 principles, gender equality, gender balance, and free, prior, informed consent, should really be essential and central into all the policies that they adopt for the projects and their programs.
Free, prior, and informed consent. This is crucial, and the forum is really tackling these extremely difficult issues. They are huge issues. So these are challenges, but we are all together in this. That's the point I want to make, that you have Indigenous peoples, governments, and the UN system working together, and the Permanent Forum is a facilitator of this effort.
The interagency group that works with the forum now is finding that it is helping us organize and coordinate our work better. We are finding, and the papers submitted to the forum this year by the different agencies show this very clearly, that there's a tremendous amount of attention to Indigenous peoples going on out in the regions.
Вообще, что может дать или как мы, члены постоянного форума, уже находясь в структуре ООН, можем сделать так, чтобы все то, что мы нарабатываем, да, не только мы, а все структуры ООН по коренным народам, вообще как это может дойти до тех общин, ради которых в принципе создался и постоянный форум, и многие другие форумы и организации. К сожалению, на сегодня я могу это сказать, да, что выработано очень много разных документов, талмудов, которые очень важны и нужны. Но если все-таки не будет на самом деле того, что эти талмуды будут как-то влиять реально на жизнь коренных народов, то нет смысла, или как сказал мой один хороший друг, они очень хороши, эти талмуды, потому что ими хорошо разжигать в печке огонь. И поэтому вот как раз очень важно, чтобы это вот было, чтобы мы могли нашу работу, чтобы она стала реальной для коренных народов. И один из механизмов, чтобы это было, мне кажется, очень важным, чтобы мы, принимая решения, добивались его исполнения.
Se intentó de que este foro fuera un espacio de solución de conflictos que también pudiera intervenir en aspectos de conflicto entre pueblos indígenas y estados, pero lamentablemente su mandato fue limitado. Sin embargo, creo que es muy importante fortalecerlo y que realmente los gobiernos, las organizaciones de cooperación, las agencias intergubernamentales y los mismos pueblos indígenas pues hagan uso de este foro donde se debaten diversos temas entre representantes de estados y representantes de pueblos indígenas. Creo que es fundamental seguir insistiendo de que debemos de hacer una evaluación del foro permanente y ver cuáles son las limitaciones que tiene para fortalecer su mandato más adelante.
Well, there are many ways for them to be engaged. The most important engagement, I think, is to participate in the debates of the Permanent Forum. But also other forms of engagement have to do with their NGO communities and contributions to the voluntary fund.
It's a source of great disappointment to all of us that, for example, the Permanent Forum is not better funded, that the Voluntary Fund for Indigenous Peoples doesn't have more resources, and that governments are not more serious about their rhetoric. I think governments have gotten better in talking about the rights of Indigenous peoples. Now we just have to back up the talk with actual deeds.
I think we're all aware of the difficulties that Indigenous peoples face, especially with regard to economic financing to attend these type of meetings, the funding that it takes to arrive to a place like New York from a distant location. And I mean, there's all kinds of stories that we've heard about people even paddling before they, on a canoe, before they have to get to an area where they can get a plane to get out of their area to get to another plane to finally to make it here. I mean, there's continuous stories, and I think initiatives like the Voluntary Fund have been very important, especially in this new initiative, in this new forum, because we've already seen that access, that opportunity to arrive and participate and not having to worry about looking for funds through NGO, and it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be just all that NGOs are helping these people get there. It should also be the responsibility of governments to educate it and have that capacity building for the civil society. And we need governments to really look at that as a special initiative, as an important initiative, because just with these one individual coming and getting this kind of information and taking it back to their communities, we're already starting the process of education for the next group or for the next generation that's going to be participating in this.
Americano, índio já royam pupuru, foi uriam, foi ham pupuru. Pata puruma,
I encourage all relevant parts of the UN system to assist the Permanent Forum in implementing its mandate. Indigenous peoples continue to suffer disproportionately. As part of our global effort to overcome these problems, we must develop schemes that specifically target Indigenous peoples. The UN will play its part in helping member states to try to transform those MDGs into Indigenous realities.